sewing with stripes. A bit of a challenge, but so many possibilities for creativity. Let me show you. I've always been attracted to garments with stripes. This is actually one of my skirts that I bought a long time ago, and I love, it's just a knit, and I just love the combination of it. And even the trim was on a bias cut piece here, and it was just so much fun to wear. I don't like to wear stripes on the top part because they make you dizzy. Like when you're actually watching somebody and they're like dizzy. I had a friend of mine long time ago was wearing a striped shirt, black and white striped shirt. It was the tiny stripes, kind of probably like this. And he was wearing it, and it was black and white, and I was like, I can't even talk to you because my eyes are like dancing around. As a costume designer, we don't use stripes. With the video, it's a little bit better, but actually video has a lot of trouble too. It's called moraine, where the camera can't focus on one part, so you'll see it dancing a little bit. I see that a lot in the news channels where the anchors are wearing striped clothes, or herringbones even. They have the little lines in it, and the camera can't settle down, and it's like dancing. So take a look and see if you ever see that. But this stripe right here, if you're wearing that up here, it's really dizzy. I don't know. And they're hard to. One of the things with stripes, and what I'm going to show you a little bit, is, some tips on how to match them up, is when they, like, this one is a vertical stripe because this one's going down the length grain. And then somebody was making this, I just found this in my stash right here. It's just looks like it was going to be a skirt. There's a opening for the zipper, and I was like, I don't know where this came from. But some of them, right, here's the side seam. Some of them match up pretty well, and when that happens, it's so great. You can see it right, where'd it go? Right here. It's so great when that happens, but on the other side, this one right here didn't match up. Right in here, they're kind of off a little bit. Those ones, the vertical stripes, are really hard to match up because you can't really cut and plan it to do it. You have to really measure it. I guess you would actually measure it from the side seam down like 5 inches. That one hits, and then just cut everything evenly and hope your fabric is laid out evenly so that it all matches up. But if it's just a little off, you can kind of tweak them a little bit. But I really like how this one was lining up right there. That's like so great. And it looked like it followed along most of it. It started to slip here and there, but actually, yeah, so one side. Whenever I would make a stripe thing, I always find out one side did really well and the other one was a little off. So I don't know. I say don't risk it. but I found these patterns, and I was attracted to them just because of the stripes. And look how, like when you have bolder stripes like this, they're easier to match up. But they're, this tinier ones are just like you'd have to put a million pins in it. But this one, so much fun how you can make pattern changes with stripes. And then this was another pattern with the splicing in the skirt part. That's similar to this, I think. Really fun. And I also found the skirt here I love. This one, different stripes. We have the vertical and then the cross grain here and then a vertical right there. And then this is her actually wearing it. I love, that's such a pretty skirt. What fun to wear that one. So think about if you're finding just cheap cottons. I have some around here, like these kind of just cottons with stripes, and what can you do with it? You can mix them, for starters, I had this polka dot. You can mix them with polka dots and make a skirt like that, stripes, and then a polka dot and a stripe, or just use this as a trim. Kind of fun, or the solids, or doing maybe yellow. Using lots of fun with stripes. Oh my gosh. And then I found this photo with bold stripes, and then purposely knocking them off here. Like this is a wrap, and then making it so that the stripes kind of don't join up, and it actually gives a thinner appearance, because if they went together and they're horizontal, then it's wider, but the breakup on that actually makes it look really cool. I love this one too. This is like a little overkill of stripes. We got the cross grain, and it's going around horizontal, and then it would have been fun to put some vertical in there, but this is a good editorial piece. Lots of fun. Oh, and I love this one. Here's another spliced up one where it's on the bias and then different kinds of, like, I don't know, this one's really crazy. They're all bias cuts here. And really, wow, really, I love that one. That's really pretty. And I really love this one. Oh my gosh, just the cut in here. And you can really play around with the design lines on these and create thinning looks just by chopping into the stripes. Takes a bit of a lot of planning, I gotta say. A lot of just mapping this out, sketching it out, maybe doing a muslin of it, and then drawing in the stripes. I love this one too, another wrap skirt, and this one's utilizing striped border on it. What fun with a graphic print. Because otherwise, if this was all just a graphic print, it's a little too much, but that stripe in there really kind of molds it in and doesn't make it so, overpowering on the bottom part. Now this one is a little overkill. I think it's got the fringe on it and the stripes. I don't really like this one a lot. That one's stripes. And then I found this book in my stash, 101 Sewing Secrets, and it has a page on there, designing with striped fabrics, and some creative ideas on like offsetting the stripes and creating a different pattern in there. It shows how to do that. And then adding trim, like this is a soutache braid between the layers to really pronounce the switcheroo. It shows you how to do that. This one also talks about combining two striped fabrics together, sewing them together, and like right down the stripe, and then creating a whole new fabric of a different pattern of stripes. I think this one had the two pieces here, and then they joined them together, and then it's become that one fabric. That was pretty clever. I never thought about doing that, but here's they're like sewing them together, and then from there creating a design. And again, a lot of math, a lot of really bringing that, having to figure out how to go about it. I love this one, getting the strips and then creating a whole different effect here. And here's that one I think they look like they used in the cuff right there. So stripes have so much potential for creativity. I'm gonna have to do one of these projects. Don't know what. So I've been collecting striped fabrics for a while, and I find them and I love them, but I really got to get on to making something with them. This one's a really bold stripe right here, and I only bought a yard of it. It's an interesting print. I thought it would be a really cool rosy skirt, really bold, and then really I got to come in with some ideas of doing some trim around the borders on them, and wow. Now these kind of stripes, you have to be careful to match these up. You have to look at the pattern. If you have to attach these two together, then you have to really have the room to put your pattern piece to get the other pattern matched up. So these bolder, wider stripes really can be good, or they can really pose a problem as far as matching stuff up. So this fabric here is really pretty. It's a jacquard with a stripe built in the cross grain, because this is the selvage here, and then it has it in the cross grain, so you'd have to make sure that all the stripes match up as you're cutting it that way. But you probably also cut it, this would be one of those good patterns to mix and match it, but and the cross grain here is pretty strong, so that's actually going to be great on the cross grain. So there's a lot of potential in playing with this pattern here, and then maybe getting cream silk in there and putting solid pieces in there to mix it up. Also in home decor, you got a lot of stripes around. Oh my gosh, I had a lot of these pieces. And these, if you're matching anything up, you got to really match, you got to watch the pattern breaks here, because they're not even stripes. A lot of people think all the stripes are just match up the ends, but you really have to watch the pattern repeats in there. And then some of them are tricky too. You'll have like a little line, and then a bold one, and then a color. Like a lot of plaids will be like, oh, that one's got the yellow ones, and then it goes down, and it's got the red. So there's a lot of tricks and some stripes. You got to watch out those. So I love this fabric just because it feels really good. This is a bottom weight fabric, but it's a real tiny stripe here. And this one, you almost kind of can't really worry about matching this up. This one's just going to flow as it is, and it's so tiny it makes your eyes dizzy too. So it's not a real big deal on that one. This is like a men's shirting, or it could be women's. It's really beautiful cotton, And the stripe is on the length grain here, so you're probably cutting, most of our garments we cut, length grain, so we don't switch them around. But this would be fun to do the cuffs and the collar on the bias or on the cross grain and really mix up the stripes in there. Be really pretty on that. And then putting white borders like on the pocket, maybe a white band on it, so really fun to, you don't have to worry. If it's on the length grain, they're not so hard to do. Here is one of those patterns that is really crazy. It's got, you got to watch the repeat. So you got the tan, the brown, the white, this one, that one. Where does the next one start? Probably, yeah, right here. So that's about 10, 11 inches to if you had to match those up. And this is also the stripe on this way. If you're cutting it cross grain, and you got to like work it, your pattern pieces. A lot of patterns you want to choose too are probably not patterns with a lot of pieces in it, because then there's a lot more matching things up, and it's like what goes to what, Patterns with less pieces. A couple, like the big chunk pieces are good. I really love this stripe right here. I gotta do something with this. This is a silk charmeuse. Look at that pattern on there. Stripes and then stripes within the stripes. This one right here, I actually was playing around with it. Like, what if I made big pleats right here? I did a seam right here, and then how would it look on the inside right there? That would be really fun. That'd also be really fun to put a black piping down some of these right here. You could even literally cut up the strips and work with them and play around with it. Also, this on the bias could be really fun too. So these are crazy stripes. If you see crazy patterns like these in the stores, really look at it and go, what can I do with that? They're so much fun. Here's another, this is a chevron pattern right here. Now you got to think about, this one is also used as a stripe. You want to try to get them matched up on the sides right here. And also thinking if you had to sew them together, the seam allowance will knock this off. So you would have to like have that plus the seam allowance, then the other part, move it back plus the seam allowance, and then it ends up on the chevron. So those are really fun to match up. Yeah, that would be challenging. So you have to really do a lot of the math, and think about the seam allowances will cut into that. Also in plaids, you have to think about these, see them as stripes, and then matching up the chunks. And this is where sometimes I've seen plaids where like they'll have like a blue stripe here, and then they'll have a red stripe here, and then they'll have a yellow one here, or something like that. So it's actually, you think you can just match them up. It's just a short little move up to match them, but then, there's like a pattern thrown in there. So these are considered the stripe ones too. I love this stripe. Measurement strips. These are fun. If you were to match these up, you gotta so here's there's a 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and then the 2 right here. So I try to trick you. You gotta look at those. And then there's, oh boy, this one is gonna be fun. Look at this stripe here. This is a silk charmeuse, and you can see the black. There's a whole pattern here, but this is also on the, I don't know, this is the selvage here. So this is actually cross right here. And you have to see but the cross grain's pretty strong, so it would be easy to do that. This would be a fun stripe to really chop into a skirt and splice it up, and then maybe get the black in there as a contrast. And then actually putting pipings in between stripes can really help separate the patterns, and then so your eye could see it as another block. So if you put like a piping in between all the seams. This was a pattern that I actually designed on Spoonflower. I was at my church, and the pastor was behind this really cool background, and it looked kind of like this. And I drew it, and I actually drew this, and it was supposed to be more muted, and then I had Spoonflower do it just on a cotton, and I ordered 3 yards instead of ordering a swatch, and it came out just brighter, and I've never used it. So it's got the selvages going this way. I have the stripes going up and down. I had some plans for it, but I That was so many years ago, I haven't used it yet, but that's pretty cool little print in there. I can, gotta come up with something here. That'd be a pretty skirt, and twisting the stripes around in there. I think, yeah, I gotta find that project. Crazy. Here's just a piece of fabric. This would be a fun one to do a skirt with right here, and then really put some, I don't know, I think this would be a fun one to chop it up and twist the pattern around too. So be on the search for stripes and then study them and see if there's any kind of creative design that they put in there, and then see if there's something that you can do with being creative with some fun stripes. So don't pass up the stripes in the stores. Another problem with sewing with stripes is what thread color to use. Do you use black or do you use white? It's really hard in the really different contrast ones, because then the black thread could show through here and the white thread could show through here. So I guess you just have to decide which one to do. I probably would use the black because I think the white is more pronounced with the thread on it. And you want to probably use a tighter stitch, which I actually don't like to use either, but the tighter stitch doesn't show as much. Yeah, you'd have to play around with that and see how what it works with. You could even just use red and then have a red thread going through there. I don't know, but you have to keep that in mind and experiment with what how, you know, depends on your pattern. If it's a really loose one, the seams aren't going to show, but if it's real fitted, they'll show. So depends on the fabric, depends on the pattern. It all depends. So now I'm going to show you a few tricks to cut and sew stripes together as evenly as you can. One thing you want to look at with stripes also is just because it's a stripe doesn't mean it's even on the print. You can see this one, you got the selvage here, and then it was torn right here, and you can see that the black stripe here is getting narrower and narrower into nothing, and this was torn, so it was torn right on the cross grain, which is really more important because then it will hang straight. So actually, if I did a clip here and tore this one, you can see it's going off. So the fabric, the print is printed on. So it literally looks like if it was woven in, this is called a piece dye. If it's woven in, it's a yarn dye. It means the actual print was woven in there. So this really went off. It went like off. It was like that was the green stripe. So if I had cut it along that stripe right here, the grain would get wonky. It would look good, but it wouldn't hang exactly right. And this is literally, this stripe is 1 inch off. So this grain is 1 inch off right here. And if you know anything about grain lines, that can really make a garment just not hang really well at all. So that's a problem with stripes. Automatically you think you can just follow the stripe and it will be on the grain, but not in this case. That one's actually pretty bad print. But so I want to show you how you would match up a stripe. Let's say we're not going to worry about this grain, and then the stripes just really have to match up. So first off, you're going to take your fabrics, and it's real important to lay them out really well before you lay your pattern pieces off. So actually, if I did the cross grain here, the whole stripes are off right here. So I would choose, depends on the pattern, or do I want the stripes to match up? So to match them up, I would match the stripes right in here. I actually like to use silk pins when working with silks, and also just these stripes, especially with the sewing part, because a lot of times I'll keep the pins in and sew over them. Don't tell anybody. But one way of doing that is to actually just got to get, if you don't have to get every one, but see how that one's off. And the grain is really going to mess up with this, but just get some of these on here and then it's off. But I want to get this right into that stripe there. Oh, yeah, see, this one's going to be pretty hard to get in there. Wow. So you have to do too is then get it, just get this even here. I'm going to go back to these big pins and then start and then do a couple. I get it even there. Oh, look, I got that one right on there. That was a crapshoot. And then another right here. it's a hair off, so I'm just gonna take it out and try to get the 2 layers even right here. Get that on. It's off again. I think the pattern has to go down, so I'm gonna take the top part up and just get a few, let's pretend it's on there. And then you just get 1 stripe all straight, and then you lay out the rest of your fabric. And I like to use these cutting boards too, because you can, once you get those locked down there, then you can lock them onto the cutting board here. So once you have your fabric on your table all laid out well, and then some of your stripes and chunks all pinned on there, keep it from wobbling around too much, and also just really anchor down the cross grain on one of your lines on your cutting board, and your selvages right here, get it really straight out. And if you're working with these slippery fabrics, oh boy. So this is a basic skirt pattern. It even shows the plaid here. They have a back and a front. So working with bigger chunks is going to be a lot easier. If this had like panels in it, it would really give you a lot of trouble right here. So this is the grain line here, wants to go up and down. And then I have a stripe, like a horizontal line cut across that. You can use the grain line to get a straight line across. So you just use a ruler, get straight on that grain line, and then give yourself a line. A lot of these patterns will come with a lengthen and shorten line, and that's what I like to use because they're like in the right spot, and it's much easier to use. But this pattern didn't have it. So this one's cut on the fold, and then you want to do is get your lines straight. Like I have a line on here, and it's right, they're lined up on the side seams, and you would watch the notches here. This one actually is off here, notches, and then get your exact straight lines, your horizontal line there. And then if you can cut it this way too, it will really help. So that's just your basic piece. So this one doesn't fit here, but this one not fitting here, I'd actually have to bring it up another right here to match it up. Let's say this fit. So pretty simple. You would just get that horizontal line. First you want to get your length grain straight. That's going to make the garment hang right. And these anchor pins are going to get in the way. So we get the length grain straight, and then line it up on the, so I mean this stripe is a little off, so it's going to be a little bit of a problem. You're going to pick a line. So I'm going to pick the turquoise one right here. That's going to go onto the top of that line, and then I make sure my next pattern piece, this one's cut on the fold, is starting right on that line also. You can also use your notches right here. So if you had like a notch, you're like, okay, I want the notch on the yellow, and then you would do this notch over here on this one starts on the bottom yellow, or right on the purple. You can use your notches as indications too to match up. Now if this pattern here, if you had to move this up, then I would be looking at, okay, I have the notch on the yellow, and then I have to come up here and I have the notch on the yellow, and then I continue on here like that, because I'm also looking at, are these patterns repeating evenly? So it goes yellow, purple, this pattern is crazy. But that's where you give yourself a horizontal line if there is not one, or you use the shorten lengthen line that's a direct horizontal on patterns. It comes off the grain line, or you can use the notches as indications like that. And then you pin it down very carefully, because I do lots of pins so that it doesn't slip, and then you sew it. I wanted to show you what the lengthen shorten line is, in case you don't know. I have a video out about how to use those lengthen shorten lines. They're right here. It'll say fold on length, so they're actually to be like to shorten a garment. pattern piece like in the mid area, you don't just shorten it from the bottom, but so you got your grain line here, and those lines are usually like a double line right here. That would mean that you cut through it, spread it, make it longer, so that's the lengthened line, and then the shortened line is here. But you want to use this line here, it's like a little double line right there, and then it's a great indicator, like if you were to cut this skirt out here, this little skirt here, it's got princess seams right here, which would be a little on the harder side with the plaids or with the stripes, but it would work. So you would actually, let's say we line up this line here, and then you're in your next piece, you use that line right here. So you always know that they put them in the same spots right here. So there's your notches here, and then it is lined up here, right there. So it's a really good way if you're doing stripes to use that lengthen line. And see how this is moving around. You really want this anchored on the table. So this one's actually on the fold, and then would cut it right here, and you can have that stripe, have the stripe on the top part of the line or the bottom line. It's just a great indicator line to help you out when matching stripes up. So now to sew these stripes together, first off, which is the wrong and the right side? This is like a silk charmeuse. It's got a nice gloss, and then the crepe de chine on the other side. You could use either side. I think I'm going to use this bolder one as the right side. I like to use silk pins here, mainly because it's silk, but also I'm probably going to sew over these. So right here I'm going to put, so you're going to think that if you match up at the exact edge here, that's not where the 5/8 is, but your 5/8 is going to be right here, the seam allowance. And so you want to get these pins to be on the underside, to be right on the stripe right there. And then you put your pins right here. The slippery fabric, I might pin it at least every other stripe. And then you just make sure that your stripe, yep, the other pin on the underside is coming right up that line. And then right here, there. Looks good. And every couple stripes. Yes. And generally, if it's a good fabric, this one's a little off grain though. I can't believe that. It's so off grain. They'll line up. You get a couple of them, they'll start lining up. But so you may also want to use a walking foot, because that really helps slippery fabrics. It keeps the bottom and the top layer feeding at the same time. But I'm actually just going to sew over these pins right here. I'm going to sew 5/8 and see how that turns out. All right, so I'm just going to do a quick 5/8 inch seam here. I'm putting on 2.5. I also suggest to really kind of slow on the slow side so that it doesn't slip all around. I just sewed right over the pin. Silk pins are a little bit easier for the needle to miss. So right over it, and then these pins will keep it moving at the same speed. There we go. Now to see if this matches. Ta-da! All right, that looks really good. All right, sewing stripes. That turned out really good. Seam was perfectly lined up, although there's one little problem. You can see it slipped in the black and the yellow. The most contrast part, it slipped. So if this were a couture piece and I was doing it for a client, I'd probably tweak that a little bit. But it's like, why are these ones perfectly straight and then it twists right there? I don't know. It's a mystery. Well, I hope those few little tips helped sewing stripes. You just have to really put more time into laying out the fabric, pinning it, and looking front and back on there and matching them up. And then using those horizontal lines across from the grain line, the length and shorten lines will help. And use bigger pieces, pattern pieces, so a lot of little ones are really going to mess you up, although sometimes that's where the fun is. But if you're going to do that, use like a cotton fabric, nothing real slippery. Check the grain lines too. Are the stripes printed on, and are they printed right on the grain line, right? So this one looks like you really couldn't mess it up, but it was really a whole inch off. I could not believe that. Wow, that can mess up a garment from really hanging right. Well, I hope this helped, and let me know how yours turns out. See you in the next video.